506 on 105.9 WMAL. My name is Dan Mandis, in for Vince Coglianese. As we try to make sense of the news, and I got to tell you, one of my faves out there as far as conservative voices go is joining us here on the Vince Coglianese Show. Mary Catherine Ham is joining us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Of course, glad to be here.
So there's so many things I want to talk about regarding politics with you. I think one of the biggest stories that is out there really is the fact that Kamala Harris, of course, is refusing to speak to the media. And there is a story out, and I think that it's obviously a horrific story, but it's one that really does punctuate what is going on in America today. And this is the headline from the Daily Mail. I think this is breaking this afternoon, where a 46-year-old woman has been, I'm just going to read the headline. I hate to read these kinds of headlines on the radio, but a woman brutally raped at knife point by one of these migrants in New York, and another migrant held back the woman's boyfriend while all of this was going on. This happened in Times Square in New York, and it's just, I mean, these are horrible stories, but these are all stories that punctuate the failure of the Biden and Harris administration. And it just seems like we see these stories so often. It's just, I hope that they don't lose their impact.
No, look, it's important that we know about them, even though it's hard to know about them. And frankly, the Daily Mail sometimes does a better job than our domestic press covering any of this, because our domestic press does not want these crimes to reflect badly on the Biden-Harris administration. But the fact is that when you have unscreened, huge numbers, millions of illegal immigrants coming into the country, you have challenges housing those populations. We end up paying to have them housed. We end up paying to give people Visa cards and cell phones and all sorts of things. And then on top of that, yes, there are violent criminals among them. That doesn't mean all of them are, but there are violent criminals among them who do terrible things to U.S. citizens. And if those folks had not gotten into the country under this administration in the first place because they had been doing their proper job at the border, those crimes would not have happened. That includes murders. That includes rapes. That includes assaults in broad daylight, right? These are failures of this administration to protect their own people, their own U.S. citizens, and that is like the principal job of a government, right? But they pass on that job all the time. I mean, look at San Francisco, which is where Kamala Harris came from. They pass on enforcing the law. In fact, what they do is they go up against, they're happy to go against business owners for little piddling nonsense about their registration and their building codes, right? But when it comes to violent criminals and drug addicts and homeless tents on the streets, they're like, nah, that seems fine, right? Same with Minneapolis, which is where Tim Walz was in charge in 2020. They'll go after you during COVID for having a church gathering cookout with too many people, because you're easy to get. But what they won't do is go after people who are burning and looting and causing $500 million of damage in the city and hurting people. There were people who died in Minneapolis, right? But that is not the thing he's interested in policing. The thing he's interested in policing is you hanging out with your friends during COVID. I mean, it is a wild standard and a dereliction of duty, and something that maybe someone in the press could ask any of these people about.
Well, I got to tell you, Mary Catherine Ham is joining us. I want to play you one of my favorite audio bites from J.D. Vance as he was being interviewed by Dana Bash. And this is where, they did a bit of a battle.
Okay, you've now asked me 3 questions about comments that I made 3 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she supported policies that opened the American southern border. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she lied to the American people about Joe Biden's mental facility for the office.
I got to tell you, one of the things that I was really impressed with J.D. Vance on, I think he was on at least 3 of these weekend Sunday talking head shows. And you've got Waltz and Harris. They are MIA. They're nowhere to be found. And I love that J.D. Vance basically said to Dana Bash, I want to talk about policy. And all she was, for this 22-minute interview, it was all about these comments that he made about childless cat ladies and all of these other things. As we have the reprehensible things that we have to talk about, the ramifications of what's coming across our southern border. And J.D. Vance got a little ticked at that.
Yeah, look, I think he did a very good job. I watched every single one, actually read the transcript of one, but watched each of the other two interviews. They were adversarial. They were tough. He got asked a lot of tough questions, and he came across calm and smart and warm, right? Like, that's a pretty good place to be. There's an interesting moment, too, with that exchange from Dana Bash where it goes on and she says, I only asked you one question about the remarks from 3 years ago. And I checked the tape. She asked 3 questions, right? Like, that is the priority. I also watched the Margaret Brennan one, which is on, I believe, CBS. She asks 8 or 9 abortion questions in 6.5 minutes. Like, I don't feel represented by that. I don't feel like my concerns are being addressed. I would like to buy groceries for less than a mortgage, right? That's what I'd like to do. But that is not on the top of mind for people who are asking these questions. Nonetheless, Vance did the job for them, which is to bring up facts, to bring up contrasts, to hold Harris and Walz accountable. And if that's going to be the Trump campaign's job, because the media is very clearly not interested in doing it, and he did a pretty good job of it yesterday.
I think the reason why Margaret Brennan was focused so much on abortion is because they feel like that is a weak point for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. They feel like that's a weak point. That's why they're going to, in their minds, throw salt in that wound.
Yeah, and the thing is that he pivoted nicely and said, hey, look, he's right. Like, a lot of pro-lifers disagree with Trump about his position right now, which is this is a 50-year battle we had. It was decided at the Supreme Court, and the decision was it goes back to the states. So when it goes back to the states, different states are going to have different levels of regulation and what that looks like, right? And Vance makes the point that's actually a very moderate view. It's true. It is a very moderate view, right? And one that a lot of voters, particularly women voters, agree with, right? That restrictions in later months is fine. Exceptions are good. And the states will be deciding this, right? So it's not a crazy position. He then went on to say, like, the Democrats actually have a pretty out there position on this, which supports abortion up until the point of birth. It doesn't mean there's a ton of them, but they do support that as a policy, right? And then Brennan tried to fact check him and actually reinforced his point, because in fact, Kamala Harris did vote against the Born Alive Abortion Survivor Protection Act, which would have required doctors to give medical attention to infants who survive an abortion attempt, right? So she did vote against that because she views it as a problem for reproductive rights in this country. That's her quote. So the fact check was kind of goofed as well, even though they tried really hard to get him on that.
Well, they're trying everything possible to try to trip up J.D. Vance. But, if you just put the whole, cat lady, childless cat lady thing to the side, there's not a lot to criticize him on. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, from a policy standpoint, he's right there with most Republicans and conservatives. As you very accurately pointed out, he is warm. He is not combative. As a matter of fact, I think that Dana Bash really looked combative during this particular interview. I want to play this one other audio bite, get your thoughts on it.
I think Kamala Harris clearly owns the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, especially when we consider the fact that, as we've all learned over the last few months, Joe Biden clearly isn't capable of doing the job. And so I think that drives home that Kamala Harris really has been the one calling the shots. I mean, how could she not? I think Joe Biden doesn't really know where he is.
Kamala Harris has been calling the shots. Says who?
Says who? I mean, the fact that Dana Bash just seemed so clueless that Joe Biden is not calling the shots, I don't know if she is being, purposely obtuse, or if she's lying, or what. But what do you make of that?
Well, I think what I make of it is that they just want to ignore that there is this pretty big scandal happening, which is that I don't believe that the president is capable of doing the job in the capacity that he needs to be doing it. He's doing like a phone call a day, a meeting a day. He dropped out of the race because they forced him, because they knew he couldn't run a campaign. So they're going to tell us he's got plenty of energy to run a country. I don't believe that's true. I think there's some power sharing going on that is not commensurate with our Constitution between the vice president and a bunch of cabinet heads and him when he's, I guess, sometimes when he's on the beach. And like the fact that journalists aren't curious about that, like, do you think that if a Republican candidate had dropped out of the race but was still the president, and the vice president had become the candidate and she's out on the trail and blah, 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 that they'd have no questions about, like, well, who's in charge? Who's in charge? Because that seems pretty important to me, particularly when, like, World War III might break out, or an exacerbation of this Middle East war that is happening that's very dangerous, when the economy is sort of on a ledge. I'd like to know who's in charge.
Mary Catherine Ham is joining us, host of the Getting Hammered podcast, and our guest this afternoon. One other soundbite that I want to play, and I think that the reason why this is so important, it really felt like Dana Bash in this interview, and you can talk about this interview, and I think the same concept applies to a lot of these other interviews that J.D. Vance has done, and that is that the media seems to be trying to play sort of the protector for Kamala Harris. And so now you've got J.D. Vance going on these various shows, and he is, as is his job, defending the Trump campaign and the 4 years that Donald Trump was in office. But they started talking about Tim Walz and this concept of stolen valor.
He received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to
She's talking about Donald Trump.
Avoid serving in the Vietnam War, reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful, too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody. Whether they served our country or not, I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving. I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying, I went to war. Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said, I went to war, but he didn't actually? That seems to be a problem to me.
I think it's a big problem for Americans. How big of a deal do you think this is?
Well, here's the thing about it. It either matters that Walz tells the truth about it or it doesn't, right? The press wants to tell you, like, it doesn't matter all of a sudden, and they're willing to give him a pass because they like him. But the truth is, which is where the press should be interested in doing work, the truth is that there is a clear pattern of him at the very least leaving the false impression happily that he was in combat zones, that he was in combat, period, right? There is this is the clearest one to me, on his current website and on his challenge coin that he gave away as a congressperson is the wrong rank. Okay? I'm quite certain that Governor Tim Walz is smart enough to know what his rank was upon retirement, and you're not going to convince me that he's been inflating it by mistake. That's not a mistake. It's happened many times. He's been reported on in print as being in Iraq or Afghanistan. And look, maybe that came from the reporter, but you can correct that. And you know how you correct that? When you're made aware of it by your fellow veterans who have been saying that this is a problem since 2016 or 18, right? Yep. Like, he's had this brought to his attention, and he keeps doing it. Vance, on the other hand, does not have this weakness, right? In fact, he went to Iraq. He was a combat correspondent there. He was in for 4 years. And it doesn't have to be about who was in combat and who wasn't. It's about who's honest and who's not.
It's about the lie. And that's what the media doesn't seem to understand. Mary Catherine Ham is joining us on the Vince Coglianese Show. Dan Mandis in for Vince this week. One of the things that I know that as conservatives we all appreciate, and you certainly do, are our heroes, our military heroes, the 9/11 heroes as well. And you are going to take part in a 5K run that's going to be taking place in Northern Virginia. It's happening on September 22nd. I think this is a great thing. And talk a little bit about your participation in this event.
Yeah, so I'm on the board of a great organization called the Travis Manion Foundation, named after a fallen Marine who died in 2007 in Iraq. I know his family very well. And we have this wonderful group of people who get civilians and military folks and first responders and veterans and families of the fallen all together to learn from each other and to sort of like build between these communities and mentor kids. And one of the things we do is the 9/11 Heroes Run, which is a wonderful way for families to remember 9/11, maybe teach your kids and teach the next generation a little bit about this, to be out there with families of the fallen who we honor, to be out there with first responders, with military veterans and active military, to run a 5K. By the way, you can walk it too. There's a fun run for the kiddos. But there's one in Northern Virginia. You can go to 911heroesrun.com and run with me in Oakton, Virginia. I would love to have you guys out. It's such a great group of people, and I think you will love being out there with us. And you get a really cool T-shirt, which is always a plus. Americans love a cool T-shirt. 911heroesrun.com if you would like to come and join with these military veterans and families of the fallen to honor them on that important date. It's September 22nd is when ours happens.
Got it. September 22nd. Great to know. And I've got 30 seconds left, but this is really important. How can people find your Getting Hammered podcast?
Yeah, you can find it anywhere you find podcasts, Apple, wherever, Spotify. And it's a fun time. We try not to raise your blood pressure, even though we are talking about politics. So I think you'll enjoy it. This week we're even doing a little vodka taste test on one of our shows, so you guys can enjoy that. I don't suggest doing that right before a 9/11 Heroes Run, but go and sign up. Don't drink vodka beforehand. Listen to Getting Hammered. So it's 911heroesrun.com.
527, Dan Mandison for Vince Coglianese on WMAL. Let's go to Phil in Fredericksburg real quick on WMAL. Phil, thanks for calling in and holding on.
Hey, look, I just want to say that I'm surprised that the Republicans are not fighting Harris on her being awarded the delegates illegally in her position that she's in now. I mean, the proper way to do this would have been for Biden to have resigned his office, Kamala to have become president, and then they could have moved forward from there. But what they've done with Harris now, there's 15 million Democrats that they spit in their face. Nobody voted for Harris. They voted for Biden. They should have ran, a vote and then had them vote for Kamala Harris. This is the most Soviet thing I've ever seen in American politics.
This is, Phil, I appreciate the call. This is an absolute coup, and you are right. Democrats, though, you know what? I don't believe that they care. And that is what is really sad because, it's the Republicans, of course, as you know, we're the ones that are, and I'm going to air quote here, the threats to democracy. Literally, you had the Democrats, though, go after Joe Biden in this coup and take him out. And again, Democrats don't care. Republicans are the ones that are always facing attack from the left. But really, it's, the Democrats' projection. It's what they do. Thank you for calling, Phil. It's 528. Dan Mandis again in for Vince, 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news. 534. Dan Mandis in for Vince Coglianese, 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news. So I had a caller earlier, and I was in the middle of an interview, so I couldn't really talk about it. I don't really know much about these photos that allege to show J.D. Vance in drag that have been posted online, but the usual suspects are just giddy regarding these photos. And I'm just going to tell you that there's two pictures. From what I can tell so far, I'm on the Daily Beast, and you've got J.D. Vance and clearly a very young J.D. Vance. He doesn't have the beard. He's got a woman's, I guess it's a shirt on. He's got a sort of a necklace thing going on. He's got a wig on. And people on the left are like, oh, we finally got J.D. Vance. He's in drag, right? And I'm looking at this, and it's a silly picture from college, man. That's what it is. So I personally, the left will make a big deal out of this. I don't believe it is a big deal because it is what it is. It's a college thing. Here's how the Daily Beast portrays it. And by the way, these photos are everywhere. A second image of J.D. Vance allegedly dressed as a woman in a blonde wig has been posted to X, formerly known as Twitter. The post reads simply, a second photo has hit my inbox. It appears to show a man in drag wearing the same wig and costume as in an earlier image said to have been snapped by a Yale classmate back in 2012. A spokesperson for Donald Trump's running mate did not deny that the first photo posted on X was authentic when approached for comment by the Daily Beast. The second photo shows the subject looking down at the camera with hands behind their neck it was posted on the same account as the first picture. So number one, is this actually J.D. Vance? It looks like him, but I have no idea. You know what the thing is? With AI these days, man, you could do anything. But if this really was AI, there'd be better photos because they're not really very good photos. One of them, they're both kind of blurry and they're just not great photos. But apparently Vance, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just getting up to speed on this story because I don't think this is a big deal. I mean, if you're a supporter of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, then you are a rational human being. And you understand that when you're in college and you're doing the keggers and all that kind of stuff, you have, what do they call it? When you're in a fraternity, hazing. There's hazing, that kind of thing. I bet you this was like a hazing thing, if it is J.D. Vance. I don't know if it is or not. They say the Travis Whitfill, the source of the alleged photo, said that it was taken by a classmate at Yale and sent to him. He, in turn, sent it to Matt Bernstein, A Bit Fruity podcast host, who posted it online. Okay. They say it's from a group chat of Vance's fellow classmates and is from a friend of a friend. Says, I believe it was grabbed from Facebook and was taken at a Halloween party, Whitfill told the Daily Beast. The new photo quickly got more than 500,000 views, with one user posting, so this is what it's like for August to have 2 Christmases in it. I don't think this is not going to be a big deal to anybody. I can't imagine. I mean, if you're on the left, you already hate J.D. Vance, and if you're on the right, you think reasonably, and as I said, you look at this and you go, Christmas, fraternity, hazing, college, keggers, and on it goes. One guy says, say what you want about J.D., but nobody can deny that he's fabulous, wrote another. It is the latest drama to involve the GOP vice presidential nominee. Oh, my Lord, the Daily Beast, could you be any more biased? If you were to talk about drama with a VP candidate, for the love of all that is holy, look at Tim Vance, for the love of God. Tim Walz. They say it is the latest drama to involve the GOP vice presidential nominee, who was the subject of widespread comments online speculating that he wore mascara. Okay, so I'm going to be honest here. On my morning show in Nashville on WTN, I looked at those photos. I don't know if J.D. Vance wears mascara. I don't know why he would. I didn't know men wore mascara, but apparently some men do. I've never heard of that. I also didn't know that men wear lifts, which was one of the accusations with Ron DeSantis. The first image started trending on Sunday under the hashtag Sofa Loren, a reference to Italian movie legend Sophia Loren. And on it, friends, this is not a deal. I'm just going to tell you, it's not a deal. When you look at Tim Walz and the drama surrounding Tim Walz regarding the stolen valor, regarding him saying that he went into war zones with a gun when he was never in a war zone. Earlier, we had a great interview. I'm assuming you can catch it on the podcast, where the Minnesota governor has had meetings with a guy who is clearly anti-Semitic. If you'd like to check that out, you can on the Vince Coglianese podcast page at the website. I mean, all of these things amount to clearly Kamala Harris did not make the right choice for a running mate in Tim Walz. She just didn't. But these photographs, they are literally nothing. I'd be curious. I mean, if you're a conservative and you're a supporter of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, is this a problem for you? Because the guy called up earlier, and again, I didn't have time to take the call, but he said that he did find this concerning. I don't find this concerning at all. I think this is, again, just, silliness. And when you look at J.D. Vance and you look at how well he performed over the weekend on all of those talk shows, I was just talking to Mary Catherine Ham about all of that. I think that he did a great job. You know, I love the fact that, again, he called out Dana Bash for asking non-policy questions. Because here's the thing. That's what Americans want to know. Americans want to know where he stands on policy.
He received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to avoid serving in the Vietnam War.
Talking about Donald Trump.
Reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful, too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody. Whether they served our country or not, I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving. I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying, I went to war. Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said, I went to war, but he didn't actually? That seems to be a problem to me.
I love the fact that he turned it right back on her. And here's the deal. I was just telling Mary Catherine Ham earlier, there's a story that is breaking where you have a couple of illegal migrants in Times Square in New York, breaking news out of the Daily Mail out of New York, where one migrant raped a woman while the other one was holding the boyfriend back. Horrible story. Yeah, one of the big questions from Dana Bash as she was interviewing J.D. Vance was this, I like to call them non-traversies, this non-traversy about Kamala Harris and is she really black?
Do you believe Kamala Harris is black?
I believe that Kamala Harris is whatever she says she is, but I believe importantly that President Trump is right that she's a chameleon. She pretends to be one thing in front of one audience. She pretends to be something different in front of another audience. Look, Dana, she's not running a political campaign. She's running a movie. She only speaks to voters behind a teleprompter. Everything is scripted. She doesn't have her policy positions out there. She hasn't answered why she wanted to ban fracking, but now she doesn't. She wanted to fund police, but now she doesn't. She wanted to open the border, but now she doesn't. She should have to answer for why she presents a different set of policies to one audience and a different set of policies to another audience. And I think that's what President Trump is getting at. This is a fundamentally fake person. She's different depending on who she's in front of.
Absolutely. 544 on WMAL. Tony is in Haymarket, line 3 on WMAL. Hi, Tony.
How you doing? I just wanted to agree with you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Tony. All right, let's go to Richard on line 1 in Frederick on WMAL. Richard, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the left is really getting pathetic on this, trying to find things on Vance or Trump. I've got those pictures from college, I mean, diddly squat. I've got pictures of friends from the University of Maryland streaking across the campus, naked as jaybirds, and it doesn't mean that they're perverts or anything else. It means that everybody was having fun, and everybody decided to all of a sudden have a streaking session across the University of Maryland as some kind of maybe a shock factor, but everybody laughed about it. That's all they did. And they got pictures of me wearing a trench coat and pants legs cut off with a gigantic 3-leaf clover where my privates are, and I would walk around and flash people for no apparent reason at any particular time. It doesn't mean that I was a flasher. It doesn't mean I was a pervert. It was Halloween or it was a party and we were celebrating and having fun.
Yeah, and Richard, I appreciate the call and you letting me know about your experiences. I don't, as I said earlier, first of all, if anybody's going to go after from the left, if anybody's going to go after J.D. Vance about dressing in drag in college, it's a little confusing and a mixed message because according to the left, I mean, they love that stuff. They embrace this stuff. Just go to San Francisco, right? So this is something that the left should be celebrating in J.D. Vance. And as far as conservatives go, as Richard said, and I think Tony before him, this is absolutely nothing. Now, here's the thing. is that the left will talk about this stuff all day long because they don't want to tackle the issues. You know, it's interesting because when you look at the issues that the American people care about, when you look at what you really care about, it is the border. It is the cost of things. It's the failed pullout of Afghanistan. All of these things are what the American people are truly concerned about. And for Dana Bash, and I got to tell you that I, as a former journalist, I thought this was an embarrassing interview. I'm just going to tell you. I thought it was an embarrassing interview because all of these questions, number one, J.D. Vance has answered before many times about the childless cat lady's comment and some of the other things that were asked. And she really was, and this is why I think people were surprised that she was the one that they picked to host the debate. She was defending Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. She was defending them. And that's not her job. Her job as a journalist, in my opinion, is to ask the questions that the American people need to have answered so that they know who to vote for in the upcoming election. There was no news that was made during this Dana Bash interview with J.D. Vance. None at all. It was just she was there to defend Kamala Harris. And when you listen to the interview, when you watch the interview, it is obvious that that's what her mission was. And yeah, I like the fact that J.D. Vance called out Kamala Harris for not coming to the table with interviews.
Political benefit. And I think that the most important thing here, Dana, is it goes to Kamala Harris's judgment. Tim Walz is ultimately going to be the vice president. Kamala Harris is in great health. I'm sure she's going to be president if she wins for 4 or maybe even 8 years. Why did Kamala Harris choose a person who has lied about their military service? I think that is a serious lapse in judgment. And I don't want to hear from a campaign spokesperson of Kamala Harris. I want to hear Kamala Harris herself address what I just said.
That's exactly right. Because remember, the folks came out, the Harris campaign came out and said, we talked about this earlier with Mary Catherine Ham. They came out and they said, well, Tim Walz misspoke. Really? He misspoke for years? Is that your story and you're going to stick to it? Okay, whatever you say. Alex is calling from Kansas City on line 1 on WMAL. Alex, thanks for calling in.
Well, thanks for having a great show. But let's not forget, they made a big row about Ralph Northam in his blackface and KKK outfit, didn't they?
Yeah, they sure did.
Yeah,
they sure did.
Yeah, same amount of attention.
Alex, you're right, man, and I appreciate the call. But here's the thing: if you're talking about something that happened back in college, if you're talking about something like the guy that called earlier, where he went streaking when he was in college, these are things that people do. You know what's so infuriating is that I can sit here and Donald Trump will do it tonight when he's speaking with Elon Musk on X, where there are genuine issues that the people across America are really concerned about and really experiencing when it comes to our economy, when it comes to crime, when it comes to all of the things that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have inflicted on the American people. And so those are the kinds of things that the American people want to know about. Real quickly, there's a guy named John Taffer. He's the guy who hosts a Bar Rescue, and I have a bunch of audio on this. Maybe I'll save some of it for tomorrow. But he talked about what is going on in American cities like Washington, D.C., and all across America as a result of Bidenomics.
You know, I drive through a downtown area and I see all the vacant stores. I don't see vacant stores. I see crushed families.
Yep.
Crushed dreams. You know, the impact is powerful. Think about this for a moment. Whether you're on the left or on the right, no matter what your political desires are, right, prosperity drives everything.
It does. Prosperity drives everything. And Bidenomics, you can call it Kamalanomics, whatever you want to say, the last 3.5 years have been absolutely brutal. When you talk about inflation, when you talk about the interest rate, how many people are still trying to pay off their credit cards right now because they had to charge their grocery bills to their credit cards? And now you've got interest rates on credit cards really high. And so it's just this doom loop of for the American people dealing with Bidenomics. And unfortunately, the media and people like Dana Bash, they don't really seem all that interested in talking about the things that really, truly are impacting you and I. Dan Mandison for Vince Coglianese, and Hoke is calling from Round Hill on WMAL. Hey, Hoke.
Hey, back 1,000 years ago when I was in college, I was in a fraternity, and we raised thousands of dollars for the Children's Miracle Network. And one of the ways we did that was a male beauty pageant. I bet there's not a fraternity member alive today that went to school before 2000 whose chapter didn't do a male beauty pageant.
Hoke, that is a great point, and I think that you're right, because although I didn't go to college, but I do know that my friends who were in fraternities, they did that kind of thing a lot. And there's always going to be pictures like that out there. And this is just the Democrats and some of these folks on the left trying to get some dirt on J.D. Vance, when the reality is this is a man who has an incredible history. He has an incredible story. He is an incredible communicator. And over the weekend, you saw exactly why Donald Trump chose J.D. Vance as his running mate. Hoke, appreciate the call. And my name is Dan Mandison for Vince Coglianese. We'll see you tomorrow, 105.9 WMAL.